So today I'm going to be talking about something that is probably not going to win me over any subscribers. As a matter of fact, it's probably going to have the exact opposite effect, as tends to be the case whenever I discuss anything even remotely polarizing or controversial in any way. But I'm going to do it anyway for a couple different reasons, which basically boil down to because I feel like it. But reason number one is because I think that this is something extremely important that's affecting humanity as a whole, and it needs to be discussed in a way where it's done in a level way. It needs to be level-headed. It needs to be done with a lot of nuance. I think that it's a subject that it's not necessarily sensitive. It's sensitive to other people, but it's not to me. And I don't have any problem talking about this, and I don't think it should be a big deal to talk about it because it's just part of everyday life. But for some people, they get really sensitive about it, and they seem to not be able to have this conversation from a place of reason. They seem to not be able to talk about this stuff without losing their mind, for lack of a better word. I find it very strange that it seems that our society has become dominated by people that are frankly just soft, that can't handle discourse, can't handle debates, and opposing ideas. It seems to be, more often than not, that the people who are running this discourse or are in charge of the conversation tend to be the most sensitive individuals who simply they can't handle it, so why are they engaging in it? Which in part, I'm going to be addressing in this video, and the title kind of alludes to part of that conversation, that it seems that there's a lot of people engaged with this conversation that just shouldn't be, because they just can't handle it. With all that being said, what is it that we're talking about today? Well, as the title implies, we're going to be discussing the mind virus, that is, you're either with us or you're against us. This is a very dangerous parasite that has been around and has been infecting our society for years, and it has unfortunately retarded or demented a lot of people in the process. This virus seems to have the ability to strip individuals from their natural ability to use their brain and critically think, unfortunately. This video is going to tie into and expand on a conversation that I've had in many other videos before, or I've at least alluded to it in other videos also. The more recent video that I've done, mildly alluding to some of this conversation, was one of my last videos discussing The Witcher 4. Now, the conversation on this video is going to go way beyond that, and the topic is going to be a lot less mild in nature. What I'm going to share with you today are all my unfiltered thoughts around the quote-unquote culture war and a lot of the political discourse and debate that's been going on for a while now. I'm going to tell you how I really feel about all that, what I've observed over the years as an immigrant, because believe it or not, when I first got here when I was 15, it wasn't quite like this. Sometimes I often joke that I'm a boomer, right? I lean into the meme because a lot of my opinions on Yu-Gi-Oh! And things that I've said, they're very boomerish in nature and people make fun of me and I think it's funny, so I lean into it. But with that said, I'm not that old. However, I'm old enough that I've been able to observe a very bizarre shift in this conversation and this discourse over the years. I also have a little bit of a unique perspective when it comes to this subject because I came from another country where this discourse wasn't really an issue before I moved here, so I was kind of welcomed by it. It's not like I really grew up with this, using the example of a frog in a pot of boiling water. I think we've all heard of this before, but just to use the analogy, if you throw a frog in a pot of boiling water, it will immediately jump out. However, if you throw the same frog in a pot of cold water and you slowly boil it, the frog will boil to death. It won't jump out of the pot. It's not that it makes your perspective better or worse than anybody's, but when you come into something that you didn't grow up with, that you're not used to, you feel the shock way more than somebody that progressively got used to it. And that was definitely the case for me when I first moved to the US, and I think that my first introduction to this discourse and the virus was in college. What I've observed over the years in my time here, which is now just a little bit over 14 years, has been a evolution or an amplification of a very, very old tactic and discourse that I think that a lot of people are falling for. So what exactly is going on? Don't worry, in just a minute, I'll get into specifics and I'm going to tell you exactly where I stand on all of this debate. But what I think is really going on here is something called divide et impera, also known as divide and conquer. Straight out of Wikipedia, just to further illustrate how in our face this is. Divide and conquer in politics is the concept that refers to a strategy that breaks up existing power structures and especially prevents smaller power groups from linking up, causing rivalries and fomenting discord between people to prevent a rebellion against the elites or the people implementing said strategy, aka the people in power. And oh boy, how true is that? How true is the fact that you need to pick a side, otherwise you piss everybody off? I'll start this conversation by saying I don't think that any of this discourse or the culture war, quote unquote, that we're seeing right now, I don't think that any of this is by coincidence or organic in nature. You can very clearly see that that's the case based on how it's being funded and promoted. Of course, though, with the unnatural and intentional introduction of this discourse, you also have a somewhat grassroots and organic movement in opposition to it. With that said, as natural or organic as the opposition might be, there is definitely an intentional provocation of its existence. The opposition wasn't just born out of thin air. It was very much intentionally provoked into existence, is my belief. It is my opinion and my belief that what we are seeing currently emerge or re-emerge is by design, completely. Why does it seem that over the years, politics and different social issues have now infected every single aspect of your life? You can't get away from it, no matter where you look. Even among spaces that were traditionally known as escapes, right? Entertainment, media, video games, and so on. These are spaces that usually politics don't affect. These different social debates between the protagonist being a certain race or a certain gender or a character being ugly or being attractive, and these different gaming companies making these political statements or social statements that didn't used to be a thing. The political discourse itself has always existed, right? But this cultural movement that you can't seem to get away from no matter where you look is a fairly new thing. This is just my observation as somebody who had a chance to experience this in two different cultures, right? As somebody who's lived in two different countries and has observed this shift happen in both places. If you thought that the culture war was something exclusive to the United States or North America, it's not. It's something that very much is the case in South America now also, and I know exactly why. Like I said, traditional political discourse has always been around. It's always been extremely contentious, and people have always argued about that. There's nothing new there. But in my observation, at least in my lifetime, the real shift that I've observed is cultural in nature, which that is fairly new, at least since I've been alive. It seems now that everybody needs to have an opinion. Everybody needs to pick a side. And that wasn't the case when I was growing up. Even as a teenager, that certainly was not the case. When I was growing up, whether it was my time in Brazil or the United States, my observation was that the vast majority of people were not political. And it was very interesting over the years, and frankly very sad, to watch the average person get hijacked by the "you're either with us or against us" mind virus. It was very sad to observe non-political people overnight become extremely political. And what I'm talking about here is something very specific that happened. It's not that people just became political, because there's really nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with people wanting to become involved and learn more and grow more and do more research and become more intelligent and involved human beings. I don't see that as a problem. Unfortunately, the mind virus does not command for that level of nuance. What it really seems to do is it seems to compel the average person to get involved in the discourse by virtue of emotion. It seems to have compelled individuals to pick a team. It hasn't really promoted critical thinking or independent thinking, really. That's not what I've observed. What I have observed is the discourse getting dominated by extremely underwhelming and average individuals that, frankly, probably have no business getting involved or discussing this. And it's certainly not because I or you or someone else is more intelligent or has more of a right to be involved in this conversation than some of the people. That's not what I'm saying. Everyone is definitely allowed to have an opinion, and in theory, it's a good thing that people get more involved. It's a good thing that people care about what's happening in the world or their country. It's in theory a good thing. The problem though is the way that a lot of people, if not the vast majority of people, have become involved with this subject. Not only do a lot of them lack the basic knowledge, and their arguments are mostly regurgitated talking points. They're not original thoughts or original ideas. A lot of them are also very immature, and they can't handle this discourse without freaking out. They can't handle somebody that might have one different view than them without calling them some sort of ism. Oh, you voted for Trump, you're a bigot. Oh, you voted for the left, you're a communist. Or even again, bringing it back to the culture again. Oh, you like the design of this character? Well, you're part of the problem. You're a wokie, and you're what's wrong with the gaming industry or entertainment and media. Or on the other token, oh, you don't think that the lore of the game should be broken? Or oh, you prefer playing as a male character? Or you prefer, I don't know, that the character looks this way or be this? Or you don't like this direction? Well, I guess there's no merit to anything that you're saying, and you're just a bigot. That is most of the discourse that I see on a cultural level. It's this culture war nonsense where people are not allowed to think as individuals. People don't seem to be allowed to form their own ideas anymore. They're not allowed to think independently. You know, if you're on this team, you have to agree with everything this team says. You have to agree with all the talking points. If you're on the other team, you cannot agree with anything that the other team says, and there's a specific way you should feel about every single issue that someone has determined. And it's funny because when I personally make videos discussing this type of subject, I manage to piss off both sides a lot of the time. There certainly are extremely annoying individuals on both sides of this argument, and I've called them both out, frankly. Now granted, I would be lying to you if I didn't say that one side of this argument is a lot more annoying than the other. It's just the way I see it. And this is not necessarily political, because a lot of people that don't agree politically fall on the same side when it comes to the culture war stuff. There is a huge counter movement that has formed in opposition to these extremely annoying and screechy individuals that are pushing a lot of this stuff. And I personally definitely fall more often than not on that side of the aisle. I don't always, but more often I tend to agree with the counter movement for sure. But it's not always the case, and what I've been growingly observing is that even people who I consider to be on a more reasonable side of this aisle, people that I tend to lean more with and agree with, there is a growing amount of people who are a part of that group also who are just as unreasonable as the other side and are just as fucking annoying. Oh, you like this character? You like this decision? Well, you're part of the problem. Oh, you enjoyed this or you didn't enjoy this? You're a wokey. You're a this. You're a that. There's name calling on both sides now. And it's what I mean when I say that on both sides of this argument, there's people that shouldn't be a part of it. Like, your arguments can't be that just because someone liked this character, they're a communist, or because somebody didn't like this direction or this decision, that makes them a bigot. Like, that can't be your argument if you want to be a part of the conversation. Or at least if you want anybody who is at least semi-intelligent to see your side of the argument. If you want to persuade or change the culture or whatever, it requires a little bit more nuance. Your arguments require a little bit more structure. The conversation requires a little bit less emotional immaturity, right? Otherwise, you're not persuading anybody. You're just screaming into a void. They genuinely think that they're fighting a war and whoever wins this war is going to change the culture or whatever. Okay, that's fine. But the truth is that you don't change people's minds. You don't win them over by calling them a bigot or calling them a commie. And maybe there are in fact some people who are just genuinely bigots or just are racist or whatever ism you want to call them. Some people do fall in that category and you would be stupid not to know that. But the vast majority of people do not fall in that category, and you're doing the discourse a huge disservice by dumbing it down to that level. You're not helping anything. You're not changing anybody's mind. You're not quote-unquote winning the culture war. You're just being a goddamn pest. You're just being annoying. And the reality is that when you call people names, when you push somebody into a corner, they get emotional and they're less likely to see your side. You are way less likely down the line to convert that person to your cause or to make them see your side. That's not going to happen. And there is also another extremely detrimental and nasty thing that happens when you do that, is that if you label a group of people the boogeyman for long enough, some of them become the boogeyman. If you just insult somebody and you call them something enough times that they're not, they just might end up becoming exactly that. By doing that, you're doing a huge disservice to your own cause, and you're doing a huge disservice to humanity because you're turning a lot of normal people into something nasty that they originally weren't. For the most part, this doesn't seem to be anymore a nuanced debate and conversation that involves some level of thought or intellect. It's just name-calling. And the second that you stop judging people or certain situations on an individual basis, you become what we refer to in my country as massa de manobra. Massa de manobra is a term that literally translates to massive maneuver. At that point, you are no longer an individual with nuanced and self-reflecting thoughts of your own. You are simply a massive maneuver. You are simply part of the virus. You got taken over. And what I try to urge people is, do not become the monster that you seek to destroy. Don't turn into the same animal that you're fighting against. Now, again, I gotta be honest with you and say that I understand where a lot of people in the counter movement are coming from and why they're just fed up with the conversation in general and they're just very set on how they feel. So they're not willing to give someone or a piece of media, entertainment, or whatever it is, even a chance if it falls under certain categories. A lot of people are starting to fall in the territory of if the protagonist is black, or if the protagonist is a woman, or if they talk about X or Y, that is instantly a trash woke game. And it doesn't help that, I gotta be honest, there truly is in fact a pattern where it does seem that that ends up often being the case. where when you see something or a character or a piece of media or a subject, you instantly assume that that game or whatever it is going to be woke trash. It doesn't really help that then often the case is that the creator or the developer or the studio behind that piece of media is preaching exactly this message. And it doesn't help either that the movie or the game ends up also being really bad. Like it doesn't help when there's a pattern, and there obviously is a pattern. So I am sympathetic to those people that have observed a pattern. I just am. I'm sorry, because they tend to be right. With that said though, I'm not ready to partake in that. I have in the past and I have chosen not to anymore. I definitely have fallen in this category many years in the past also, but I actively chose to step away from it. I don't want to be a part of the war, quote unquote. What I have chosen to do many years ago, and that doesn't have to be what you choose to do, it's just what I chose to do, is I have chosen to judge everything on an individual basis. Even though I'm not blind, and I've obviously have been able to observe patterns in this conversation as well. I still try my best to approach each case, each individual, and each situation on an individual basis. There is not one word or one type of character or one type of message that just makes me instantly hate whatever it is that you produced. I don't have this visceral reaction where I see this type of protagonist or I see this type of message and I'm instantly ready to hate the game or whatever. There are a lot of situations or individual pieces of media that have been produced by studios or individuals that are pushing a despicable message or something that I vehemently disagree with. And frankly, many of these companies do deserve their downfall. Just using Ubisoft as an example, I think Naughty Dog is going to be another one of them very soon. Or we can talk about the infamous Sweet Baby Inc. A lot of these companies and people deserve their demise because it's a free marketplace of ideas and of purchases. So if you're trying to shove a message down people's throat that most people are going to have a reaction to and not want to consume the product, you're just being stupid. With that said though, me personally, I try to judge everything on an individual basis, and I actively try to separate the ideology from the product. Because if you don't do that, it's going to be very hard for you to find enjoyment in anything in this life. That's just the truth. If every song that you listen to, you make it a point to first research the artist and what their political beliefs are or how they feel about the culture war or whatever, you're not going to have a lot of music to listen to. If every new movie that comes out, the producer or one of the actors in the movie says something that you don't agree with, you're going to simply not watch it just for that reason, you're going to miss out on a lot of cool things. A lot of cool things and a lot of my favorite things are produced by individuals that I highly disagree with, and I think that the message that they're pushing is destructive. And that doesn't mean either that you're forced to enjoy something that you don't enjoy. Like maybe there is an excessive amount of this messaging, right? Or the game is just bad. Then the game is bad and you don't have to play it. That's fine too. For me, I remember a time where it wasn't that long ago where a new game would come out and none of this debate existed. I'll just use as an example 2 games that I really like that are made by a company that everybody now unanimously hates, Ubisoft. So the first game is Watch Dogs 2. I love Watch Dogs 2. I hated the first game. I love the second game. The main protagonist in that game is a black man, and the game is fantastic, and I really like the protagonist. He actually reminds me a lot of somebody that I know in my personal life that's very dear to me. Maybe I'm biased for that reason, but I like the game. The first game, the lead protagonist was a white guy, Watch Dogs 1, and that game was absolute garbage. But the second game, it's not woke trash. The game is actually really fun and really good in my opinion. And when that game came out, Watch Dogs 2, I didn't hear anybody calling it woke garbage, right? Nobody assumed that the game was woke just by looking at the protagonist at that time. This whole nonsense conversation wasn't an issue back then. Like, nobody had a problem with the protagonist. None of this stuff mattered. Now, I've replayed that game many times, and if I look hard enough, I'm sure that I'll find one or another social message that I might disagree with, but is that going to ruin the game for me? Absolutely not. Do I care that it was Ubisoft that made that game and what their message is or what they believe in? No, I don't. The game is really good. I'm playing the game. I'm not playing Ubisoft. I don't care what they think. Another game that I really like is Assassin's Creed Syndicate. That's one of my favorite AC games of all time. And I bring this game up because a lot of people have strong feelings on female protagonists, right? They don't want to play as a female protagonist for whatever reason. And people have their reasons for that. I'm not shitting on them. That's a game, if you don't know, where you can choose to play as the male protagonist or the female protagonist. And I always play as Eve. I always play as the female protagonist, and I'll tell you why. I love that character. I think that Eve is a fantastic protagonist, and I never play with the guy. I don't even know the male protagonist's name because I never play with him. The other reason why I choose to play as the female protagonist in that game has a lot to do with maybe, I guess, MMOs and how I've always played those RPGs in different games. For me personally, I don't know why, but if I'm building a tank or a soldier or like a long swordsman or something like that, I will usually make a male character. To me, aesthetically, it fits a lot more for that character to be a big, bulky guy, right? A tank should be a strong dude. Now, if I'm playing as an assassin, a sneaky character, or an archer, I will usually make a female character because I think they're cooler. I feel like female characters fit better that role of being more nimble, and to me they just fit better. So because Assassin's Creed is a game where you play as a sneaky assassin, to me, I prefer playing as a female. And again, when that game came out, I didn't hear any debate or any of this nonsense about the game being woke because one of the protagonists was a woman. Same thing. Back then, there wasn't this hate for Ubisoft already, and I'm not saying that the hate that they're getting is undeserved, right? I've made videos on that, but I'm just saying the hate wasn't there, so the product was appreciated for what it was. Now, you can argue that the game is just intrinsically better, and that's why there wasn't that debate, whatever. I'm just saying that there wasn't this immediate, visceral reaction to the characters. Like, I don't know anybody, and I don't remember anybody complaining about the protagonist of Watch Dogs 2 being black and that was going to make the game woke, or that meant something. I don't remember anybody complaining about Eve in Assassin's Creed Syndicate either, or saying that the game was woke because of that protagonist. None of it was an issue. So this is what I'm saying, even to people that often lean on the same side of the argument as me, don't have this instant visceral reaction when you see something without giving it a shot. Oh, the character is a female, the game is going to be woke. Oh, the character is black, the game is going to be trash. Don't become the monster you're seeking to destroy, man. I understand that there are patterns. I've also observed them. Nobody's telling you to not be cautious or do your research before buying a game because you've identified a pattern. All of that is fine. I'm also not saying that these people often don't have good arguments, like is the case for The Witcher 4, for example. There's nuance to this, right? There are multiple levels. Some people don't like playing as a female protagonist because they want to immerse themselves in the game and they want to feel like they're The Witcher and they're a guy, so they would like to play as a male. Me personally, in the case of The Witcher, for that type of character, I would also prefer to play as Geralt. I would also prefer to play as a guy. There's even another element to these games that one of my subscribers brought up in my comment section, that this game has a dating simulator. So if you're a female as a guy, it's going to be kind of weird. Like, are you going to be dating other guys in the game and you're a guy playing? Some people don't have a problem with that. A lot of people are actually into that, but there's a huge chunk of people, if not most people, that are not. They're not into it. They don't want to play as that. There's also the argument that by Ciri becoming a Witcher is breaking the lore, and people don't like that because they're deliberately breaking the lore just to fit her in. Those people are not wrong either. They're not bigots. They're just loyal to the lore. Like, lore to them matters, and this breaks the lore for no apparent reason. These people are also not bigots. These are people that just like the lore and they don't see a need or a reason to break the lore just to pander to a certain group or whatever. They don't like the fact that you broke the immersion. So there's definitely nuance to this conversation, right? The vast majority of people that I've interacted with around the Witcher 4 discussion and the protagonist are not like, oh, women bad. Oh, female protagonist, game is woke, trash, not gonna play it. Like, most people, that's not the reason. Now, what's interesting about this one video that I made was the reaction around it, and it goes to show you who are the reasonable ones in this conversation. So I personally really like the new design for Ciri. I like the way she looks, I like the way she sounds, everything about her. I like it more than the original. And I already told you on what side of this argument that I tend to fall on, but I judge the game on an individual level, and my judgment of the character is that they did a good job. I don't really care what the devs of the game believe in. I don't care what the company behind the game has said. I don't care about the war going on Twitter. When I look at the character, I think she looks good. Maybe the people behind it believe a bunch of nonsense and the game is going to end up being bad. That's going to be unfortunate, but I'm not going to judge it until I actually play it, regardless of the discourse. So for that reason, I kind of pissed off both sides. And pissed off is a strong word because there's really only one side that I actually pissed off. And that's what I'm saying, that you see who is really reasonable here. Now, in the specific case of that video, most of the people that watched it, it didn't reach like a broad audience. Most people watching are my subscribers. And most of them disagree with me. And on my community tab, the same argument, most people don't like the new Ciri. They don't like the direction. They don't really agree with me. The difference though is that all those people are still here. I still see them engaging in other videos and in other discussions, and I see their icon and their name. I know most of these people. The difference though is that nobody in my comments is calling me like a wokey or something like that. Nobody is insulting me. They're just explaining why they disagree with me. There's obviously a level of intellect and nuance to it. None of the comments from people on that side of the debate are insulting me. Now, when it's the other way around, the people on the other side of the debate that I also pissed off, it's a different story. And here we go back to, you would be blind not to observe obvious patterns. When I made that video, I also posted it on the Witcher subreddit, and that video caused me to get permabanned from every Witcher subreddit that exists. 90% of all the comments of people on Reddit are people insulting me or calling me a chud or something like that, and instantly downvoting the video without even watching it. There was only like a handful, maybe a couple of people that were in the comments saying, well, that's not what he's saying. Like, what do you mean? Did you even watch the video? This is not adding up. But the vast majority of people listen to the start of the video and they see that I extend an olive branch to the other side of the conversation, people that don't agree with me on her appearance or whatever. I mentioned on that video that I like the way she looks, but I understand why people don't like the break of lore, or why they don't like her appearance, or why they don't want to play as the female protagonist. I acknowledge that some people might disagree with me, right? But just by doing that, you piss off the woke mob, for lack of a better way of putting it. You're just not allowed by them to have an independent thought or even see where the other side is coming from. If you even acknowledge where people are coming from, you're instantly a bigot, you're a chud, you're a X, a Y, a Z. That is what a lot of people, myself included, are really tired of, and that's why you see such a strong and heated counter movement also. There was even some other idiot YouTuber/streamer that made a comment on that video insulting me, right? Calling me a chud or something along those lines, which they deleted their comment, so I'm not going to name them. And this YouTuber isn't the only person, right? On Reddit, people were insulting me, calling me a bigot, and all these different things. And the thing with that video is that whether you agree with me or not, it's very reasonable. Like, even if you disagree with my opinions on that video, or you think that my takes were bad or whatever, most people would probably agree that that is a very balanced and a reasonable video. I do tell people my opinion and exactly how I feel on that video, but there is no take there or any like radical statement, right? A lot of my opinions are really mild in that video. This is what I'm talking about when I say that some people are just way too soft to be a part of this discourse. Like, you shouldn't be a part of this conversation if you can't handle it. If you disagree with somebody and your instant reaction is just to call them a bigot or something because of the most mild opinions ever, frankly, on that video, you're insane. And that is why so many people are taking hard stances on these things, and it's why they're sick of this bullshit. And again, 95% of the comments on Reddit were the same exact thing, and I got permabanned everywhere. But going back to this comment, right? This person basically just insults me, says that I've run out of content, right? Because I'm not talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! Now I'm pandering to the chuds. And frankly, this individual, this streamer, this YouTuber is probably not a long-time recurring viewer of the channel. Otherwise, they would know that I've always talked about this stuff. This is nothing new. Absolutely. I've also talked a lot about Yu-Gi-Oh! But if you look at my library on my history of videos, I've made like 5 or 6 videos talking about this stuff. It's not new. You might not agree with me, but to say that I'm now talking about this because I'm no longer talking about Yu-Gi-Oh!, do the basic minimum of research and you'll see that that's completely not true. Whether you agree with my opinions or not, I have been extremely consistent since I started my channel on how I feel about everything. Now, in fairness to this person, I responded to them exactly what I just told you, and it does seem like they did remove their comment. So who knows, maybe they had a change of heart, maybe they actually took the time to watch the video and they changed their mind, right? It does seem like they removed the comment. So please do me a favor, don't go harass this person or defend me or whatever. I don't need anybody to defend me, and again, they removed the comment. Now, with that said, when you say something stupid to me or you insult me, there is a good chance that I just might call you out. And frankly, when I call people out, at least I have the cojones to leave the comment up. I don't try to hide it, right? So I'm just saying. I don't really go out insulting anybody, but I've called out Team APS, right? I've said how I feel. A lot of it is in jest, but I've called them out. My post with their @ on my community tab is still there. I didn't hide from it. My videos where I called them out, or another YouTuber, granted a lot of it is in jest, but I did call them out. Those videos are still up. I'm not trying to insult somebody or call somebody out and then hide my opinion later without even saying anything. Like, I just find that very, again, you lack the basic cojones to stand for what you think. If you insult me and you have a change of heart after I talk to you, which many people on my channel had, this scenario has happened many times, that's okay. Just at least have the decency of leaving the comment up or addressing it, responding to me or something. Don't hide from it. I saw what you said. But if you're gonna insult me and then hide, especially if you're another content creator, there's a big chance that I just might address it. What's really sad about this, and it's kind of the point of the video, is that most of you know and have probably experienced this firsthand, that this is not an isolated situation. This is not uncommon. This is not like an extreme person. This is a pretty like mainstream and normal way to interact and behave. And these are the people that I'm saying that don't belong in the conversation. These are the people that should not be a part of the discourse, and these are the people that are making everything worse and should get lost, honestly. If you don't have the intellectual and emotional maturity to discuss something with somebody that you might disagree with, you just don't belong. I'm sorry. You're making things worse, you're radicalizing people, and frankly, you're just dumbing down the conversation to a level that it doesn't need to be. I just think it's very important for people to judge things on an individual basis and don't let preconceived notions and patterns cloud your judgment or turn you into an idiot. Also be open to the possibility that somebody that you vehemently disagree with might produce something that might be worth your time, might be good also. It is possible to separate product from ideology or opinions, right? It's not always possible because sometimes it ruins the game. Sometimes it's just so persistent, so aggressive, and the game is just not good that there's no way to like look past it because the game is just bad. I understand that. But I do think that there is a possibility that things can be created and produced by people that you might not like or you might not agree with. And I get it. You might choose not to support it, and that's your choice. But that's where I'm coming from. I'm looking at everything from an individual basis, and if we want to talk about what that studio or whoever has said, I will address that individually. But I'm also always going to judge a product in a vacuum or a situation on an individual basis. I can separate the producer from the product, if you know what I mean. If somebody says something that's really nasty and I really disagree with them, but they make a really good product, I'm not going to not admit or say that I thought that what they made here was good. I'm not trying to play both sides. I'm not trying to be a fence sitter. On every video, I tell you exactly how I feel, but I am judging it in a vacuum. Now, when it comes to the discourse itself, when it comes to the quote-unquote culture war, I already told you where I lean and how I feel. I just really feel, though, that it's okay for people to disagree. It's okay to be friends with people that are in the complete opposite political spectrum from you. I have lost so many friendships over this mentality that you're either with us or against us. Some of my best childhood friends, we don't speak anymore because of that. These are sadly people that used to be normal, people that were okay with disagreeing, but at some point they got radicalized and now it's just not. On the other side of that token, though, I still also have a lot of friends that vehemently disagree with me on a political level, right? A lot of my friends are communists. We don't see the world the same way. A lot of them don't vote the way that I vote, and I don't vote the way that they vote, but we're still friends regardless, because that's what normal people do. I just really don't like how this debate has become all-encompassing. You can't seem to get away from it. You can't get away from it at work, or between your friends, or with your family, or in entertainment. There seems to be no space that you can retreat to where you don't need to argue about this stuff. There's no space where you can go where, that it's sacred, where this stuff isn't getting invaded with. I really don't like that because I think it's radicalized a lot of people that don't even want to be a part of this conversation. They don't even care. They just want to be left the hell alone. And they've been put in a position where they feel like they have to take some sort of hard stance on everything. They have to have an opinion about everything. Or they feel like they got to defend themselves because they're constantly being insulted, right? Nobody's allowed to just be left alone anymore. I think that all of this is extremely sad, and it's made average, normal individuals become extremely insufferable and annoying. I don't think that this is a net positive for society. I don't think that it's good for humanity, and I've even seen it now become a thing in my home country. Because one of the things the United States is very good at is exporting their culture. I mean, if you go to Brazil, do you think that most of the things that we watch are, national products? No, Brazilians consume American media. They consume anime. They have Brazilian media also, but most of it is external. You will never meet a Brazilian millennial male that doesn't know what Star Wars is or that doesn't know what Dragon Ball is. They all know. So unfortunately, this has also become a problem in my home country. This same debate and same discourse has been exported to my home country as well. And I just find it extremely sad. I think it's a net negative for society, it's a net negative for humanity, and it's not changing anything. It's just making everything worse. We gotta go back to being reasonable and using our brain. I feel like in the last decade, humanity has just devolved, and everything just seems dumbed down. Even discourse and debates that have been going on for years are now a dumber version of the same discourse that has always existed. Anyway, if you stuck with me till the end of the video, I know it was a long one. Thanks for your time. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave me a like, and I hope you have a great weekend. Take care.